Hey guys, so I want to talk about how to add the darker versions of your colors to your mandala because I think that's what students struggle with the most on this project. So you can see that I've already started this one. So I've got every other pie piece is a light version of the color. So here and here, these are the light versions that I decided to do. And then I'm in the process of doing the darker versions. So essentially what we want to do is that when we made our light version, we used the white of our paper to show through the colors to make it lighter, right? But when we want to make a color darker, that means we need to begin with a whole value that's darker than the paper. So if you can see here on the two that I haven't finished yet, I have this really light application of a gray colored pencil over the entire piece. So I applied this gray colored pencil to this whole triangle here, and that's gonna help to make this entire piece of my mandala look like it's in the shadow. So you can see on the ones that I've finished, this darker version has all of the same colors that this one does. They just look like they're shaded. They look like they're a little bit darker, right? So that's the goal. So I'm going to show you how exactly I did this. So again, I started by just a base over the whole thing of a really light gray colored pencil. I did a really light application of that because I'm going to need to do a whole lot more layers right now. So I'm going to go ahead and begin adding layers now. So I want to start with my yellow orange that's here, here, and here. And for the yellow orange, if you remember from when we planned our colors, I need to look and see what the opposite of yellow orange is on the color wheel. So this is my regular yellow orange, and this is my darker yellow orange. And you can remember from the last video that I decided that violet needed to be the undertone of this color in order to make it darker. So violet is the opposite of yellow on the color wheel. It's the complement of yellow. So I'm gonna go ahead and use violet to make this yellow orange look like it's a shade or darker. So I'm gonna use violet first in all of these spaces that I'm gonna make yellow orange. So for your color that you're gonna be choosing, you're gonna have to use the color wheel and look at that color wheel and decide what's the opposite, what's the complementary color to what I need to complete right now. And that's how you're gonna decide what this first color should be. So again, for me, the main color in this space is yellow, and the complement to yellow is violet. So in order to make this go by a little faster and also to make it so that it looks more uniform, I'm gonna do everything that I do in this pie piece, I'm gonna do it in this one at the same time. So I'm gonna be completing both of these pie pieces at the same time. So now that I've got my violet on this one, I'm gonna do the same thing on this one over here. So all of the spaces that are gonna be yellow-orange, I'm gonna apply this violet undertone. So again, remember the reason why we call it an undertone is because it's the tone or the color that exists underneath the main color. So the main color of this is still gonna be yellow-orange, but the undertone or the color that I'm applying underneath is violet. So again, I'm making sure that this application is really light. I don't want to make it really dark right now because I have more layers that I need to put on top. So if I were to make this really dark right now, like if I applied a lot of pressure right now, that means that I wouldn't be able to do more layers on top, which would be bad. So I'm trying to make this application here nice and light. I'm just very lightly filling in the space with the undertone, trying to make it really even. So kind of a trick that you can use to make sure that it's going to be evenly applied is to switch the direction that you're shading every once in a while. Like, don't always shade in the same direction. You can see that I'm moving my pencil back and forth in lots of different ways, so that way the application of this color is nice and even. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing to this square. A nice even application of color. So you can see that because we're doing a lot of layers, this is a lot different than how people normally use colored pencils, right? Normally people just choose one color and then they're like, that's the color it is, and then they move on to the next space. But colored pencils are so much more dynamic than that. You can do so much more than that. So that's what we're trying to practice. We're trying to slow down. We're trying to make sure that we're learning a new skill and using this product, using this medium with all of the stuff that we can use, trying to make it look good. So just because we're trying to make the color darker doesn't mean you have to use black, right? Right now I'm using violet instead of black because black is just going to flatten everything. We want our color to be dynamic. We want it to be vibrant. Just because it's a dark color does not mean that it has to be flat. Okay, so now that I've got all of my violets down, my next step is going to be the yellow. So I'm gonna go with my yellow, and you can see on all of these other little triangles that I've done that the yellow is more prominent in the center and then kind of fades out to the orange in the middle. So I'm going to, with this yellow, make it more prominent down here and then have it fade out towards the top. So it'll be kind of more bright yellow in the center and then a faded yellow on the top of that triangle. So I'm just trying to follow the same pattern that I have on all of my other little triangles here. Again, every application that I'm doing of a new color is still a very light application. I am not pressing very hard right now. I'm doing a really even, light application to make sure that I can add more layers on top. So you can kind of already see that violet interacting with the yellow. So it doesn't look purple anymore, it just looks like a darker version of yellow, which is exactly what we want. So again, if you do all of your shapes that are going to be the same color at the same time, that means that your pieces will feel more cohesive, right? It'll feel like you did them all together, like they all belong. All right, now that I have my yellow done, I remember this color is supposed to be yellow-orange, so now the next color I'm gonna do is gonna be orange. So the orange is gonna be more concentrated where it's darker, so it'll be the opposite of what I just did with my yellow. So I'm gonna make it darker or more concentrated up here, and then have it fade out towards the bottom, so that way it matches the pattern that I got going on here. So this is pretty much going to be the last layer that I do. Like I might need to even some of it out at the end, but this orange is going to be the last version that I'm like, or last layer of the color that I want to put on top here. So I can start to press down a little bit harder. So this layer is not as light because I want the orange to really stand out. But you can see this color that I've made here is a lot more interesting than if I had just done black underneath there. Like it still reads as orange. It doesn't read as like black with orange on top of it. Which is good. That's exactly what I want. Another positive to doing all of your shapes at once is that you don't have to remember the order that you did them in, right? So because I'm doing all 6 of these shapes at one time, I don't have to be like, how did I make that color? Right? I'm just doing all of it at the same time, so it'll all look like it's cohesive, like it belongs together. So the layering of the colors that I'm doing right now, the yellow and the orange, that's the same layering that I did on this light version. The only difference is that it had violet underneath it. All right, so I'm just gonna take a look at the shapes that I just finished in comparison to all of the other ones that are already finished on my mandala and make sure that they all match, right? So I wanna look at this one compared to this one and make sure that they look like they're the same color, right? So I think actually down here, these ones might need a little bit more violet so that they can match this guy. So I'm just going really lightly on top, trying to match what's going on in every other space. And then other than that, I think we're good. So I would follow the same steps that I did here for all of the other parts of this triangle I still need to complete, right? So the red, the orange, and this yellow, I'm gonna do the same thing that I did for the yellow orange that I just completed. So that way I will get pie pieces that look like this. So it should look like a light version and a dark version of the same colors. So hopefully this was helpful, and we're gonna work on it in class when I see you next time.